So the plan, guys, is to at some point to transition into some charts and look closer at specific examples and talk about what I have here, which is our 12 harmonics. Before we do that, though, anyone want to have questions about what we talked about so far, or the planets themselves, or?
Will you explain the difference between like when it rules and exalted a little bit?
Yeah.
Maybe you did and I missed it. But.
Yeah, no problem. So rules is like it's what we call home sign, like it's in its own home.
And how that affects what that means for it. Yeah.
Meaning that when we think about the vibrational spectrum of energy of a planet, it more easily expresses the higher vibrational quality. Like the moon in Cancer, if you have moon in Cancer, you're naturally expressing the qualities of the moon. Yeah. It's at home. It just can do what it wants, and it feels good there. Again, exalted is when it's in a different sign, but it's like at its best friend's house. Okay, like when you're hanging out, it's your friend's house here. This is going to feel different than if you go visit a distant relative that you don't know, it's your ex's family's house, which is really going to be like, that's like in the detriment or the fall, where we're just challenged.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or anything, any stimulation from before, or we can jump into.
Have you looked at your own Chiron placement and how do you interpret that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let me show my chart to answer that question. Oh boy, I'm not going to be able to read this without unplugging. For some reason, when I unplug it, everything gets big on my screen. Not sure why that is. Okay, should be up here now. Okay, here's my personality birth chart. So here's my sun in Libra, very closely conjunct Uranus, less than 1 degree conjunction to Uranus, 6 degrees to Mercury, and 10 degrees to Jupiter. And then going back the other way in Virgo, it's also 8 degrees within conjunction to Pluto. So all these planets were all bunched up in the sky together. So you can just see from a glance, initial observation, wow, we got a lot happening up here at the top of the chart in the 9th house and the 10th house. So when we think of 9th house, not only is that ruled by Sagittarius, but Sagittarius is also my ascendant or rising sign, which is 24 degrees Sagittarius. So we see a really strong Sagittarian 9th house emphasis. Also a little bit of the 10th house here. You know, if we were talking about house systems, there's like over 30 different house systems to choose from in astrology. So it's like a really tough topic. When I was learning astrology, I got so frustrated because I'm like, which house system do we use? Well, you really, I believe, have to work with another person to actually really determine what's the best house system. Yeah.
Can you say why there's so many?
There are many. So house systems are about geography. They're about location. And there's many different ways to measure Earth and the sky, to divide it up. Mathematical ways to measure space. And that's why they've come up with so many different ones. And so what happens is when you use different house systems, the planets, the houses they're in change. So the way I would describe it is when first, if you're delving into astrology, at first, you don't have to worry about the houses. The reason is that the planets and their position and their aspects don't change. All it changes is in which house they appear in. And you really need to determine that for yourself. Whenever you have a late degree rising sign, as I do, 24 degrees, if I go to the whole house system, just about every planet except the slower, some of them, they almost all change houses. So I had to read my chart and think about how they apply. So yeah, it's a nuanced topic when we're talking house systems. But back to the question about Chiron. What you can see is that you got this whole situation going up here at the top of the chart. And all of that is exactly opposite Chiron at 4 degrees. So it's partile opposite, meaning exact same degree opposite as Uranus at 4, and less than a degree opposite of my sun, but then you join all this together. So we have this really intense opposition with Chiron down here. And then we can see that it's also, we've got Mars all by itself in the first house. It forms what we call a T-square with all these energies. So Mars is squaring Jupiter, Mercury, Uranus, Sun, and Pluto, as well as it's squaring Chiron at the bottom of the chart. And then I mentioned how strongly it was aspected because it's squaring 7 planets, but then it's also in a very tight trine to Venus and Saturn. So Mars is at 3 degrees, it's trine Venus at 4 degrees, Saturn at 7 degrees. So there's a grand trine mixed into all this other square energy. So when we talk about hard and soft aspects, these are actual keynote words we use in astrology. And again, in pop astrology, the hard aspects, which are going to be square and in opposition, get a real bad rap because they often mean challenges. And we all in Western culture want to have easy lives that flow one day to the next and everything, nothing bad ever happens. But the idea with hard aspects is they bring challenge. They bring a dynamic energy. A square is the most dynamic energy because we're talking about a 90-degree angle. And the way I like to think about it is if you had 2 cars coming to an intersection at the exact same speed, they are going to crash. Something has to give. Something has to change. So it's all about dynamic change. So when I was looking at the body graph, I was like, well, that really sounds like the channel of mutation. Gate 3, gate 60, and the channel of mutation, a design that initiates and fluctuates, which is the formatting channel for individual circuitry, which is the most dynamic mutative archetype in a body graph. Lo and behold, gate 3 and gate 60 are square in the wheel. So right from the get-go, we can see that the mutative power of a square. A square is what gives us the opportunities through strategy and authority to respond and have growth and development. So we got a lot of potential for growth and development from a really strong T-squares, which Mars is at the apex. So we can see there's a lot of tension being put on that Mars. It's in the first house, which represents how I express myself, how I feel that sense of identity, if you will. And Chiron down here at the bottom. So what happens in a T-square like this, it becomes this dynamic need for change and growth and development. But with the opposition in there has to be some sense of balance. And so what was happening with me is I was all living up here and how I was shining out into the world, how I appeared, how my career worked. 10th house is about career. 10th house is about how we shine out into the world. And the 9th house too. So I was, in my life, I can just say that this seemed to be where my emphasis was, and this Chiron was getting extremely neglected down here. And what this Chiron is saying where it's at, it's in the 3rd house of communication. So this is saying, okay, so there's some lack of confidence here. Chiron feels like this wound. It feels like a detriment. It feels like something's holding you back. And so speaking truth and integrity, communicating the truth and integrity of my Chiron was difficult because it was in opposition to how everyone else saw me in the world. So this is how we can look at Chiron. We'll look at the house that it's in. I can see that it's in a challenging aspect. And so it's going to take some opportunity of growth and development to balance this out, for me to recognize Chiron. What is it? Where is my wound? What is this pain that I'm feeling? And somehow through Mars and how I exert myself through my physical energy is going to be part of that conversation. So I think it just at the onset, just to see in your initial observations, even just from the spacing, how they're clumped, there's certain things, just like when we look at a body graph and you go, oh, okay, sacral's defined. Okay, I know we got a generator. It's like here we go, wow, we got a really strong T-square that dominates the entire chart. Then I would go to my chart. Okay, well, where in the heck is that gate 10? I mean, where the heck is that Mars? Because there's something to learn there. Well, it's in my gate 10, line 6, in the channel of exploration. And do that for all the planets. See what the conversation that's going on here, and then go into the body graph and see what can be illuminated from the subsurface we're seeing here. I mean, I really feel like this type of information somewhere lands on the value of line value. mean, where would we be without knowing our lines? I kind of look at this information with about the same weight. It's like, what is the conversation going on? Does that help a little bit with that Chiron question? So to go back to where I was, and please, more questions are welcome at this stage. We're in conversation mode now. If there's not a question, I'll show you what my next topic was. These harmonics, so, and again, just like everything, astrology has evolved. In the day of Ptolemy, who is attributed with really the beginning, so Pythagoras, he was tying together works that were alluding to this type of concept. But it wasn't until Ptolemy, who was about 100 years AD, so about 100 years after Jesus, he came up with what we now call Ptolemaic aspects. And at that time, they were just using signs. So if you had two planets in Taurus, no matter what degree they were in, and there's a 30 degrees possible, they were considered conjunct. It wasn't till Johannes Kepler, who's really the father of modern day astrology, is where we started getting into more specific harmonics. And again, I love the word harmonic because they are harmonies. They are octaves, just like you could, when we talk C, middle C, and I'm not a music guy, Jonah could describe all this, but I mean, these have a very resonant relationship when we look at music and how these harmonics work. So when we list them out now, these are the main ones, the 12 harmonics. They also kind of have a volume quality. So in other words, when I look at a chart, a conjunction, which says 0 degrees being an exact conjunction, we would usually, this is again another subjective subject based on the astrologer. Generally, most astrologers use a 10-degree orb. So if it's with two planets are within 10 degrees of each other, we're going to go ahead and assign it a conjunction aspect. And they're very loud. The first harmonic is like a real mainframe in a chart. If you have two planets next to each other or more, as in my case, I have 5 planets, that's a large volume of the vibrational quality. And it kind of stair steps a little bit down from there. Second harmonic simply means we've taken the wheel and cut it in two. So now we have 2 halves to the circle. So it's second harmonic, and that's going to be in opposition, 180 degrees apart. Then we divide the circle into 3, which is the third harmonic. 3 into 360, 120 degrees, and we come to what we call a trine. And there's other ones in here, right? A sextile. Actually, it has 60. These aren't in a great order. I'll redo this slide eventually. But anyway, there's trine, square, fourth harmonic. We divide 360 by 4, you get 90, right? So we have the fourth harmonic, and this is where it brought in that, again, that dynamic tension, saying there's a need for some sort of development or resolution. Fifth harmonic, we're talking quintuncts and quintiles. Fifth harmonic aspects tend to involve the word astrologers use is creativity. It's an area that has to come through play. It has to come through whatever your creative outlet is going to connect with that particular conversation when those planets are in the fifth harmonic. Sixth harmonic is similar to a trine because, a trine is divided by 3, but if you divide it by 6, you get 60. So we have a sextile. Sextiles are similar to trines. In fact, they're categorized as soft aspects. Soft meaning there's a flow. Rather than a dynamic need for conflict and resolution, here we have something that's flowing, more like water, right? It's like, in fact, all the water signs are trine to each other, right? And so that's, when we would go into elements, elements tie into the harmonics as well, whether it's fire, earth, air, or water. Eighth harmonic, there's the word we always use is there's something mystical. Eighth harmonic, there's just something possible coming in. Focusing again on creativity, openness, introspection. Our eighth harmonic can bring something quite revelatory from the other side. So again, eighth, I almost kind of think of the eighth house. There's not that direct correlation, but I just always like to kind of tie things together. Eighth harmonic is very Scorpio nature. Ninth harmonic, I really haven't used the ninth harmonic yet. As they go smaller down, they get a little... In all these charts, just like a body graph, you have to assign the energetic priorities to begin to try to get a feel of it so that the chart begins to almost take a sound to it. So I haven't been using 9th, 10th, or 11th harmonic.
Health tile?
Yeah. And then when you get to the 12th harmonic, you're talking about the next sign over. So anyway, these are the main ones, just to kind of give you a little frame of reference on that. Another exciting thing I'm working on that Jonah and I will be publishing very soon on Signpost is we're going to break down the aspects of everything. And what I mean by that is not only do I working on getting the aspects of every channel, and I'm going to show you a few examples. I also actually want to get a index of every gate and the aspect for all the other 63 gates. Again, all I'm wanting to get that for is so we can add this flavor to it. It's not changing anything. It doesn't change anything that we know. It just gives us another piece of the puzzle, right? It gives us some other level of awareness. So many of you already probably know there are 3 channels in the body graph that are in opposition. And they're really important because they speak so much about our civilization. They're the most common, right? Because every time the sun goes through one of those gates, the earth is in the polarity. So the sun, earth, these opposition channels are more common than all the other channels, right? Because every time the nodes go through it and the sun and earth go through it, it's giving somebody that defined channel. And so one of those channels is 2343, channel of structuring, the design of individuality, genius to freak. Another example is the channel of community, a design of a part sinking a whole. This channel is formed through the exact opposition of gate 37 and gate 40. And again, all these are fun reflections, like just looking at the fact that gate 40 out of the ego is in Virgo. Like, that's kind of interesting. So what can we say about that? Well, how that gate is expressing its ego power is going to be Virgoan in the sense that it's going to be about details. It's going to be organized. It's going to be about health. And so having gate 40 has a lot to do with that manifestor ego quality of rest, right? We can only work so much if I'm going to do that. And then there's the support, right? I'll do this part of the puzzle, but then you got to give me the emotional support back through the 37. So I think just looking at the sign that a gate is in, again, there's more language, there's more nuance. They're carrying some quality of that sign simply by its location. Again, talking about an opposition, we're seeing how the 37, the 40, they're pulling on each other. They're in this tug of war. And here 37, the emotional, individual, tribal of the, I'm trying to say solar plexus, where I'm trying to go with this. When we think about the solar plexus and the emotional quality and the highs and the lows, and it's in Pisces. Well, that kind of makes sense, right? I mean, Pisces is so feelings oriented. What do my feelings, what imaginations do they cause me? 37, providing this emotional support and the channel of community. Yeah, it's at odds, right? It just simply is. So it's finding that balance. And we would say in that channel, it's about finding the tribal support balance. I do this, you do that. I do this, you do that. So again, you can kind of see the story, the quality of that story through the opposition. And then the third opposition possible when we're speaking in reference to channels is the 3420. So 20 being an expression gate in the throat center is in Gemini. Makes sense. You can see all these throat gates here. 23, 8, 20, 16, 35, 45, 12, a whole bunch of them. And then in opposition to that, Gemini being the third house ruled by Mercury, communication, and all that. The opposite of that is Sagittarius, which is about not short in-town travel. We're talking travel to other countries, travel to outer space. We're talking about higher mind, philosophy, right? All this greater sense. That's why I love the centaur. It's like he's shooting what is out there. Let's go there and see what's out there. So, but we have an opposition here. So again, this tug of war between, in the channel of charisma, a design where thoughts must become deeds. It's just very interesting how that pure manifesting generator channel is this polarity, the 3420, in these two opposing signs. So the balance required. There needs to be a lot of understanding what is true individuation, the power to individuate from the sacral is in a tug of war with expressing the gate of the now. Well, I don't want to answer the question for you, but any of these things I would think are great writing prompts. So when you look at your channels in your chart and break it down, what's planet is in each of the gates in that channel, take it into the zodiac, use some of the words and the keynoting and the mythology, and just kind of throw all these pieces on a table, there's a lot to unpack there in regards to your story, your mythology, and how that relates to your type, strategy, and authority. So I think it'll be really fun once we have an index where we can do this for all the channels. And here, I'd already mentioned this one, the channel of mutation. Gate 3 straddles Aries and Taurus, and then exactly square is gate 60. And when I say square, I mean exact. Like, so line 1 through 6, all of them are exactly square here. So you can see part of the mutative power of that channel. And here I was going to do an example with Pocket's chart here. You can see from her body graph the channel of power, design of an archetype, gate 34 to gate 57, which to me, for all of us, when we look at this, that's really the bedrock of this body graph, right? This is determining her type as a generator. And it's also bringing in the spleen, which is so supportive because of this channel. Well, this particular channel, based on gate 57 and gate 34, is in a semi-square, which means it's like right about 45 degrees. A square is 90, semi means half, so it's a half square. And I can share, half squares are very similar to regular squares, okay? There's not a whole lot of difference. It's the same vibrational quality. And again, it's suggesting dynamic growth and change. So when we think about that, 57 being in Libra, and again, Libra being the sign of the scales, right? In the Egyptian times, I forget the guy's name or her name, but she would weigh the heart against a feather, right? So Libra just brings this strong emphasis to balance, harmony. It's the fall equinox, which was yesterday. Super cool. Where day and light are the same. So Libra is ruled by Venus, so it loves beauty and sensuality and comfort. It's all about relationships. Libra is so much about learning, because I'm a Libra, learning so much about who I am in relation to others. That's how it works for Librans, particularly someone like me that has such a strong conjunction in my chart. But back to her channel here, that element of gate 57, clarity in the now, intuitive, acute intuition, is in this half square to gate 34, which is in Sagittarius. So, right, the gate of power in this Sagittarian exploration of higher mind, higher world, as all this greater what's out, this Jupiterian benevolence of Sagittarius, they're in a dynamic tension, right? And it's like, what is that tension? What's going on there? Well, one, it's the channel of power. Well, we can't get power without friction, right? We were saying from the gate 6. I mean, this is where, when we use words like power doesn't come from nowhere, right? It takes those plutonian or uranium reactions, and I think that just lends credence to how powerful the channel of power is. It's in these planets that are in a real, like, we gotta figure this out kind of situation in relationship to each other. Comments anytime or questions? I'll just keep cruising through this. If not, her other channel is the channel of inspiration, the creative role model, right? Individual circuitry, the most creative potential possible in a chart is in this exact channel, right? So we're familiar with that. We have gate 8, an expression gate down in Taurus, which is interesting because, yeah, there it is. Yeah, it ends right before you get to Gemini. So it actually is the last degrees of Taurus. So when we think of Taurus, which I don't think I covered Taurus, but this is the second house. It's associated with the second house. It's fixed earth, so it's all about grounding. Taurans are they love their home and their things and the money. And you think of the bull. The bull is such a beautiful archetype of Taurus because the bull is so powerful. Like, it's just looking at a bull, you're like, damn, that thing is strong. But it can be so peaceful. Most of the time, bulls aren't doing anything. They're laying in the shade, flicking their tail. But when it decides to go somewhere, there is no stopping it. So it brings this element of strength, stability, and stubbornness. Taurus can be like, no, I'm the bull. I'm going to go over there, and there's basically nothing you can do about it. So that's Taurus, and it's and a quincunx to gate 1, which is in Scorpio. So I think, again, fun to see one in Scorpio, because now we're talking about plumbing the depths of the unknown, and this deep within the deep, what creative inspirations can come from these deep wells. And any artist, that's what, or even as people, we can all draw on these qualities. When we have everything there, it's possible. We just don't have it consistently, as we know all from how this works. But just to say that, in this most creative channel, it's in what we call a quincunx, which is a really weird aspect. It's like a real fuzzy, it's not clear. Quincunxes are kind of like on a radio station where we used to turn the dial, and it's like you'd get it and it'd be clear, and then or it might jump to another station. Quincunx indicates this vibrational quality that's real inconsistent. Well, that to me speaks individual circuitry, the pulse. We don't know. I mean, there has to be periods of melancholy to let that creative inspiration and that pulse do its thing down there in the muck, and to eventually, boom, there it is. All of a sudden, that quincunx, it hits a station, and there's an intuitive clarity of what's being played. There's the message. So just to indicate how these aspects speak to the quality, again, I keep using the vibrational, tonal, the sound, the feeling of a channel can be seen in how they are in relation to each other in the wheel.
I wouldn't normally associate gate 1, which is so much yang, with like a water sign.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to think about, because like what's bigger than the water?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because
Can you repeat that? 'Cause I think it was kind of quiet.
Yeah. Singh said that it's interesting to think about gate 1 being such a yang energy, this creative self-expression as such a strong outpouring of yang energy, yet it's found in fixed water, which water we might think of yin, the water so soft and soothing and flowing. It can seem like like it doesn't fit, yet at the same time, I think we have to be careful, and I prone to this a lot, is tying together too many keynotes of too many things, right? So sometimes it just takes sort of talking it out to find the right communicative resonance where it's understood, which is so much of what we try to do as professionals and analysts, is make this stuff understandable. So
yin and the yang, and yang and the yin.
Yeah.
Always can be found. Scorpio is also Mars, right?
that's right. So that's the other thing I was going to say, is that we can't, even though we think water might initially associate with yin, it's also very yang.
Well, if you think about the land actually holds the water, like the water has the force and the land's kind of holding it back.
Everything's within everything.
Yeah.
A lot of people think Scorpio is a fire sign, which is interesting. People who don't know a lot about astrology, they're like, that's a water sign.
Right.
But Mars being the
It's-
first planetary ruler.
Traditional ruler was Mars. We've added Pluto, but here you have these two incredibly powerful planets in the water sign. So again, bringing just that awareness that Scorpio is wild. I just think it's a very interesting sign.
I think Scorpio is like a tidal wave. Like it's like a giant force of water, and water is terrifying to me. But so yeah, it's like if Pisces is the mist and Cancer is like a nice calm pool, and Scorpio is like the tidal wave.
Yeah. It's a fierce sign. It's very loyal. Demands trustworthiness. No fucking around on a Scorpio. You're going to be in trouble. It's intense.
I wouldn't.
They may not always look intense, but there's a deep burning intensity underneath the cover of a Scorpio energy. What else? I'm going to pull up some charts, and we can do this as however long we want or wherever we want to go with this. I just do one of your things. Let's see here. Open. I just had your chart. Oh, I should ask Pockets. Did you want to comment on those channels at all, or did that stimulate anything in you thinking about that?
A little bit, especially with the 3457, that being square really resonated with me. As I learned that about myself, it just kind of made sense.
Pockets was just sharing that contemplating her channel of power, design of an archetype, 3457, the fact that it's a semi-square resonated. It made sense. This dynamic, like this power of intuitive clarity, an individuation in the moment, like this intuitive clarity of what she will be moved, her sacral mechanism will be moved to respond to, generally denotes that it's going to be through some opportunity of challenge, of discovery, that you'll experience this clarity.
Especially with my 34, being 34.1 with the bully, that really felt right.
Ah, right. Yeah, the 34-1 line of the bully. Right. Thank you for that. Anything else you wanted to share?
Thanks.
Richard, I'm just excited to get to read your work soon because I think this is interesting. I like it. I'm
Yeah,
jazzed
that's
for it.
cool.
Well, I really love that everybody loves it, like, because I sure do. And like I said, it kind of just happened because the planets don't get a lot of play. There's so many things to look at in human design, and they just don't get a lot of airtime. But I believe they deserve it.
You know, that's actually, I've asked myself that question over the years because they don't get a lot of impact, but there they are on the body graph and in the mandala. And they just don't get as much play. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves.
Okay, here it comes. Okay, here's Sing's chart. Did I get it right? Sing's that look correct to you?
That is me.
Okay. Now, let me ask you before we go to your astrological chart. I mean, anything you're currently working on or contemplating, or can you name anything in your definition that? I mean, when I'm drawn to, I always try to look at energetic priorities. So when I look at this chart, the first thing I notice is channel of community because that is setting your authority. But if you want me to pick something else out,
And I'll also just say that folks are welcome to go sit next to Richard, or they can shout out things and he can repeat them in the mic. Both are totally acceptable. So.
see what I'm going to do, Sing, is look at your body graph here. Come up with a point we want to think about, and then go to the astrological chart and see if there's anything we can draw out to shed more light on that Gator channel.
I'm not sure if anything is jumping out at me. It's really interesting to me that 57's a Libra gate, because like it feels stronger than my emotional definition sometimes. But Libra's not that like. Yeah.
But it's also called the gentle.
Yeah. So it makes sense. My sun gate being in Sagittarius, that also makes sense. You know, like the exaggeration and like the storytelling beyond the marketing of it. It feels Sagittarian.
Well, we talked about. I kind of already did a 40-37, I guess, because we already kind of looked at that a second ago. Let's take a look at the money line. Okay, so 21 is your Mars. So I'm going to switch gears. So help me remember this. 21 line 2 is Mars, and your 45 is your 45 line 5 Earth. Okay, so let's go look at these. I'm sorry I have to do this every time, but I can't see my
like Mars in 21. It just feels super natural for me to just like move to, or like when I'm like informing or impacting, like it's so Martial or Aries like that it doesn't. It's not like with my defined ego. It's not like something I struggle with.
yeah.
What's also like comfortable there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Aries and Mars go hand in hand.
So the Earth would be in, the Sun is 21 degrees Sag, so Earth opposite would be 21 Gemini, which would put it over here. 21 Gemini is going to be here. This is where once I have my index, I won't be like trying to think this through, but we would see the exact aspect between Mars and the Earth, which is where the 40. I mean the Earth is. I'm sorry. And I'm sorry. 21 was the. What am I trying to say here? We're looking at. Are we going to look at the money line?
Sure.
I said that right. So the it was. What were the gates then? What was the 45? Which planet?
Earth.
Earth.
So that's in Gemini.
Yeah, so in Gemini. So, 11 degrees Aries to, it's going to be close to a sextile, but without can anybody do the math?
Well, yeah, if it was 11 to 11, that'd be
a sextile.
So it's a 10-degree orb sextile because it's 11 to 21 instead.
So it's like 70 degrees.
Yeah.
Which is going to put it in a, that's back to the quincunx.
Right, 72.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So a quincunx between the Mars in Aries and Earth in Gemini. Which is, okay, so that's the money line. Okay, so there again, it has this quality of, like I said, it's kind of like it's a fuzziness that's not there, it's there. And so again, I just feel like that manifesting channel. Like it's like, where is that creative spark impulse? It's okay that it's not there. It's a manifesting channel. It's just not designed to be there all the time. But at some point, it's going to hit that clarity from a quincunx when it comes, and then it can express. Just to look at this chart in general, too, we can see, again, another big clumping of planets here. Mars, Mercury, only 6 degrees away from each other, both in the sign of Sagittarius. So again, we're feeling this energy of high communication skills. Having these, how we shine out with our life force energy is very closely supported by Mercury and the intellect.
Yeah, Gemini energy and like Divine Throw people, really easy for me to get along with because like I have no issues communicating. If someone else has any like no issues communicating, it goes great. Like, the things I can struggle with that is like the moving towards anything Piscean, because it like I don't think I have that much over there, but just like I used to call faith the F word, or moving towards like anything that feels like fishy, like literally I'm like, oh no, that's so Piscean. Like that's like gate 30 is kind of like a tough one to transit through because I don't want to feel clingy with like my placements there.
Definitely can see in your chart too, Chiron is opposite all this. So 5 degrees Cancer would put it right here next to Saturn. So it's right in the mix of all this. Does the Chiron story resonate with you at all in terms of?
Yeah, I love a good centaur.
What else? Where should we go here? What do we want to talk about? So here we can see that the moon is very closely opposite the ascendant. So when we think ascendant, so if the sun sign is like the mainframe, life force energy, how we shine out into the world, the ascendant is very similar to that, except it's a little bit more about how other people see us. Oftentimes people may notice our rising sign more than we do. We might think of we identify more with the sun sign, typically. So the ascendant is a very strong value in terms of energetic priority, but it's often something we ourselves may not notice as much as other people notice. But here you have it in Leo, which, this kind of resonates with Sagittarius because we're still dealing in a fire sign, right? The dynamic quality of fire, the action associated with fire. So we have the moon, which is, again, in terms of vibrational quality, it's water, right? This is Cancer.
It's Aquarius, no?
No, I mean the moon rules Cancer.
Oh, right.
Okay, I'm just bringing in the moon quality of water and so forth. Being opposed to the ascendant. So when we're talking the descendant, if the ascendant is who we are, who we think we are, who others think we are, the descendant often is talking about projection and relationships. So there's this tension in relationships of how we are perceiving the other and your emotional quality with their emotional quality. This is where this balance comes in. So there's some story there where we're trying to resolve or create balance in relationships with the other through the emotional quality of the relationship.
Yeah, and like with my moon being in a hanging 19, it's
oh, there you
that's
go.
The struggle with the 49, and
go.
it's that exact thing that you're talking about.
Cool. Yeah. So at least we can see the continuity, back and forth between the charts.
We're also usually drawn to people that are represented by the planets on the DC.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
So, drawn to lunar people.
Absolutely.
Could you repeat that, Richard?
No, what you said.
I know, but what I said.
Yeah, so Jonah was indicating how often what we see on our descendant, so in Singh's case, we see the moon, we're often attracted to what's there. So him being attracted to a lunar quality in people, their emotional quality. Whether that's what he would consider good emotional quality, toxic, so forth. But the lunar vibrational quality is something that he's looking at over there, attracted to that. What else? Anything else jump off of this or the body graph?
Scorpio is always intriguing to me endlessly. My Venus in Scorpio, I have gate 33 in my Venus, which is like the gate of aloneness, and it feels scorpionic sometimes because if I don't inform, people assume I'm arrogant or I'm doing something that I'd rather not be with them. But it's so Venusian, I'm just drawn to.
I'll add to that. I think that's a great observation because also we're talking about sensing circuitry. We're talking about 33 expressing. It's an expression gate of the solar plexus energy to be shared. So this is often going to be about the secrets, the hidden that people have shared with you that you are now being able to express through the 33. That's very scorpionic. You're able to express things that not everyone else sees because somehow, however it works in your body graph, it's coming from the experiential nature of life in the solar plexus. More continuity, it feels like.
Yeah, there's so much crossover.
Yeah. And everybody knows too how, we're talking about Pluto, how slow it moves. These are generational placements, right? Everybody within a few years is going to have Pluto next to when he was born in this area of the chart. So they bring a real generational quality to it. But on a personal level, we could still say that planet, Pluto rules Scorpio, and we have the similar vibrational qualities of fixed water with Pluto in its death, rebirth, transformation. And to have Venus, it's a little wide for a square. That's 11 degrees. This gets to where it's be a little subjective on how you would, necessarily interpret that. But look, to me, they're both in Scorpio and they're close together. But again, we just think Venus and we're thinking what we're drawn to. We're drawn to me, this mysticism, mysteriousness of the world. What is the inner workings? Whenever it's Scorpio, they're going to be able to be drawn towards things and share through gate 33 things that the rest of us just don't know about. And so there's a lot of value, again, when we look at the planet and its placement. And what's it speaking to? Well, we've got Jupiter is fairly closely opposite, 28 degrees Taurus and 24 degrees Scorpio. So here with Jupiter in Taurus, again, we're thinking of an expansiveness of this fixed Earth, really enjoying the qualities of Taurus, whether it be it's a sensual feeling, comfortable, stable, not chaotic. And Taurus doesn't like chaotic. So Jupiter's bringing this expansiveness to this expression of the order and sensuality and comfort and stability that Taurus provides. But it's opposite this mysterious Venus down here that's going to go into places that are not comfortable, that are totally mysterious and unknown, and like searching through a cave down there. So here's this, balance. Where, how can we balance this? I really like things to be orderly and comfortable and kind of normal, whatever, with this being drawn to the scorpionic nature. That was just my computer.
Jupiter is also conjunct Algol, by the way.
Right.
Which is one of the Bohemian stars.
Jonah was sharing that Juno at that location is conjunct Algol. Do you want to share any more about that?
Algol. Just that Algol is one of the 16 Bohemian stars, and that if you read Ra's Rave cosmology materials, or if you listen to those, he does go into the qualities of the stars somewhat, and that there is a deep connection as well between the stars and what gate that star is in for that period of time as well. So there's more of a deep astrological connection to human design through the fixed stars. I also have a placement in that part of Taurus. It's my ascendant, actually.
And thank you for that, Jonah. I think hopefully they could hear it. I can't repeat all that. And also little tricks we do, when looking at these stars. So we're talking about that opposition there, Jupiter opposite Venus. We're looking for release points, but we can see that it's in a semi-square to Neptune. So Neptune is involved with this opposition, right? So to me, that just says, okay, let's get creative about it. Where does our imagination lead us? How do we find balance between being drawn to the mystical, mysterious, deep, unknown world of Scorpio and the practicality of Taurus? How can these be balanced? How can they work together? Well, Neptune can support that. So creative writing, artistic expressions, any music, anything that moves your imagination can help bring some order and balance and provide harmony to the opposition of those other planets. Cool? Yes.
So Chiron being in the 5th degree, would that put it in like gate 15 or 52? And like, have you?
I don't have it memorized.
I think it's 52.
52. Yeah. So I don't know if there's a way to speak to that, or if you've, I don't know, just thinking about that for myself too.
Yeah, let me take it from let me provide the astrological, and then we'll together can look at it. Are we sure that it's gate 52? Because I don't have it memorized.
It's the second gate in the mandala, or the second, in the mandala. So it's one of those.
Yeah, I have it in 52.
It's in 52, keeping still. So from an astrological perspective, again, it's kind of similar to my chart where we had such a combination of the sun, how we shine out into the world, supported by strong intellect and communication skills in a very unusual way, not typically seen from everybody else, and also with the Saturnian structure and discipline to provide form to that unusual communication of life force energy, is also got Neptune in there. And so again, even in just this conjunction of these planets, we can feel how Neptune, we have so much structure and unusualness. Neptune and imagination is going to provide a lot of support there, this idea of creativity. But if we take all that energy opposite Chiron can kind of get forgotten again. You can see how in the opposition there's so much weight over here. It just wants to tip over to this, right? It's in the 5th house, which we typically call play. It is in the house of creativity. That's what the 5th house, things that we like to do, our fun hobbies or things we play with where we find our creative imagination. Whereas the 11th house associated with Aquarius, this is about high-minded social values, egalitarianism and equality and so forth. So this Chiron over there, there's something that's being said about that. How are we healing from the social injustices that you may have encountered in your life, that you've seen in your life? How do we bring light? How do we support Chiron in this way? And so again, when we're talking in opposition, we're looking for what other planet can we look to help provide balance? And here it's in a sextile to the 10th house. So we could say, well, somehow through work and career in your expansive Jupiterian ways, is there something to work on there? How do we support some sort of wounding or challenge related to individual expression, right? Because Aquarian, being Aquarian is having your own point of view. It's like, yeah, I want my point of view, and guess what? You all get your point of view. I mean, Aquarius is very human design related, right? It's like, how are we all equal? How do we all have our own independent authority? So this is the whole story gone up here. And so Chiron is just indicating there's some element in there, gate 52, so keeping still, coming out of the root center, this pressure in collective circuitry to stop for a minute, think before you speak, and let's determine if this process is going to have some splenic awareness, logical support to be shared with others, which is kind of Aquarian. How can we support that? Where is there in the logical pattern, where's the glitch? Chiron is help pointing out this glitch. There's some pattern in here that we need to stop and be still with gate 52 and figure out how to support the pattern and how to support the balance with all this expression of the Sagittarian and Capricornian energy.
And in a way, like, that really is the detriment of Sagittarians often, is that there is no stillness, there's no, like, pausing before they speak, and then they're like, oops, that joke hit too hard, I didn't mean it that way. Like, that's because there was no, like, stillness before the communication, and that's why, like, Venus in Sagittarius is, like, detrimental.
Yeah, very, very nice. Really, yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. Totally. Cool.
Cool.
Thanks, Cindy.
Careful. It's not all bad. You knock some sense into it.
What should we do here, Jonah? Are we going to keep going, take a break, keep
Let's do a
going?
little more. Maybe one more, then a break.
Okay. If I have someone's chart, that would be... I have a bunch, but I don't know that I have everybody's here.
I'd love mine done.
Oh, well, I have Krista's.
All right. Would you mind sitting up there? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Or you can shout out the comments and you can repeat them.
No, it's all good.
Those are
Kind of a
valid.
low volume, so she might want to sit close.
Oh, another thing we spent a lot of time on in some of the workshops I did last week, so I don't know if everybody was there, but it's fun to look at your personality birth chart, which is this, which again is typically what you're going to get from an astrologer, but it's fun to look at the design date. And I have hers here. Let me, okay, let me show it to you. It just takes it a second. Just simply pointing out here, look how many planets are in Sagittarius over here. From 4 degrees Sagittarius all the way up to 25 degrees Sagittarius with the sun. Okay, so we've got some heavy duty with the North Node in there. So 4 planets in the North Node. Very strong Sagittarian energy. And what I was going to point out was just that notice the sun, which would put the Earth in Gemini over there, at 25 degrees Gemini? My brain's kind of getting scattered on where I want to go, but just it's fun to look at your to look at the design chart. So you guys can look up your information and just run an astrological chart with the design date. And for Krista, I'm not gonna be able to do it with the plug in. And so just to make one brief point about it is that you're always going to find this in all of your charts because it's going to move the sun's going to move 88 degrees prior to birth, right? So that puts it in Virgo in an earth sign. So we move from this really heavy Sagittarius oriented chart, and then again just an initial observation is showing we're moving into Earth and Libra. We got 4 planets in Libra now. So from fire into the earth air signs. And again, there's a lot more that can be said with spending more time. But I thought what we'd do is let's go back and look at a channel. So let me put up her body graph. It's fun to look at it, I think, from a channel perspective. Oh, no, that's not what it's here. Okay. So here's her body graph. Okay, same question. Is there any Gator channel that you want to pull out in here that you've been contemplating or hasn't any questions about? Or
Well, I mean, when I was thinking about just the astrology part, I guess I was thinking more about having a first house Saturn, but I don't think in my chart, like my body graph, that the Saturn really is that much.
in gate 53?
Mm-hmm. But I mean, I guess it does make a big deal because I want to see in Gene Keys, it's like, is it my pearl? So, and I've got it multiple times in there, so I don't know.
So Saturn in gate 53. What's going on with that sort of? Okay, let's look at that.
No,
Let's-
I guess I haven't really thought much about it, but I always thought about my Saturn being first house, you know.
Okay.
Of just it being like I always felt like a very tested person. Like I'm like, don't you see the tests? Don't you know those tests? And you know, and then everybody's like, no, there's not tests. And I'm like, but there are tests. You know what I mean? So I always kind of thought that was potentially where my Saturn in my first house, just sitting there in Cancer, my rising, you know, being a Sagittarius, like being so opposite each other. You know, that there was always a lot of, like, you gotta, and then even my 6th house North Node, my 12th house Gemini South Node, you know, like all those things. I was like, it's always working one way to the other.
Okay, so let's go over there now. Take a look at that based on what you said.
So I guess that always interested me versus more than...
Okay, so Saturn here is in Cancer. I thought you said first house.
It is.
Oh, that's your design chart. Oops. We need the... Here we go. Yeah, well, just to a couple of points I'll draw from what you said there was that we have such a strong Sagittarian, mutable fire. I mean, you're going for it. But over here on the ascendant, we have Cancer, which is cardinal water, you know, so we're thinking water. Saturn in the first house. It's going to indicate some degree of structure, discipline to the way that you express yourself. You know, it's not just willy-nilly. I mean, you got a go thing with the Sagittarius, want to learn, want to travel, want to go for it. But Saturn's saying, hey, we got to mind the details. Yeah, we got to make sure, you know, so it is providing structure. But being in gate 53, the gate of starting something, channel of maturation, design of beginnings, middles, and ends, yeah, you know, Saturn is standing there at the beginning saying, is this really something you want to start? I mean, is this going to work? You know, there needs to be, you can think of it as tests. I don't like to use any words that feel disempowering, because when I think of test, I think of a chance of failing it. I don't know. I typically, for myself, I try to be very proactive with charts because they are here to support us.
I like tests as challenges.
There you go. Yeah. But so the challenges at the beginning of things. That's clearly indicated in the chart. We could look at, obviously, everything comes back to strategy and authority. Nothing will ever, in any chart, ever de-elevate that role that it has for us. But here we can look at it's in tri-quintile to this whole pileup over here. This little, biquintile. So this Saturn has this Q, this line, and that goes right to the very midpoint. Whenever you have this many planets together in a conjunction configuration and they're kind of far apart, we're talking, you know, over 20 degrees apart. What you do in this situation is you take the midpoint. You just say 4 degrees to 25 degrees and figure out it's going to be right where that biquintile is with Saturn. So in other words, just to say, there's a very strong conversation between Saturn and this Sagittarian combustion over here. Quintile brings back that creativity. Like there's something through creative work, through this idea of difficulty at the beginning, Saturn in 53, some sort of test or challenge, and how your drive is wanting to start a new process, that spending time through your creative outlets as you contemplate through your emotional authority, waiting for your emotional clarity, bringing in creativity will somehow, at least based on what this aspect is sharing, will somehow illuminate whether it's worth meeting this challenge or overcoming the initial resistance that may be there.
What do you think about the South Node squaring my Jupiter, which actually I think is a pretty good spot, being right there at my...
Well, what we see here actually...
My 10th house MC, you know?
Yeah, what we see here is a really strong, and again, strong meaning tight orb, thicker line. So we can see this strong opposition, 10 degrees Gemini would put that 10 in Sag right here. And it's in a very strong square. You know, 11 degrees is right here. So anyway, the Jupiter is at the apex of this T-square, which is the nodes, but those nodes are caught up in all this energy here. So what I'm seeing here is that through this dynamic tension of your life path, through overcoming initial limitations to start new processes based on emotional clarity. Jupiter is in the mix with that, and Jupiter is saying, is it expansive or not? Is it expanding? And it's in career. So the idea through whether it's physical, actual career, like trade work you do, or how you shine out into the world to other people in this expansive way, somehow through doing that, it's working in play and providing a release point to the opposition we're seeing here between the South Node and all these planets. So I don't know if that helps a lot in that description, but I guess what I'm seeing here is that this expansiveness between this life path. When was your Uranus opposition?
2018.
2:44 p.m.
Anything?
I don't know if that's the right time or not, but watch something adding.
Have you changed careers at that time, or what can you share about that period where, in relation to 10th house information?
I didn't actually change careers. I was still even working at a place. When you actually talked about like ending your life at yours, that's probably where I was at. I'd wake up every day. I would like drink myself to dead and then wake up every day, but doing the same job. And I would just put my pants on. I used to say, time to put your clothes on, go to work. But same job.
But it was at that time that this pressure, and so that's kind of what Jupiter is bringing, that expansive quality between the South and the North in a T-square. So it's emphasizing that Uranus opposition time period, the transition of the nodes, it would be under a lot of pressure due to the square aspect and the dynamic growth and challenges that were presented to you at that time.
But I literally did think of it as work. Just living was work.
And what helped you get through that?
I don't know.
Time?
Time.
And what's come since then? What can you share about looking back now, where you are now?
Actually, like in 2018, 2017 was actually weirdly harder. So even though that's the way I felt, it was also, I had overcame a giant challenge in 2017. So, you know, it kind of like I was playing off, I'm like, it really sucks right now. I guess in my head, I was like, why are you hating this so much? Because you actually went through bigger shit the year prior. So no matter what, you know, the next year, I don't know, it's kind of, it made me think about that particular time.
Well, perseverance, though, to get through that.
Also, shortly before that, Uranus conjuncted Chiron, because you can see that Uranus opposition was at 1 degree Taurus.
Yes, there you go, Jonah. Great. Jonah made a great observation that at about this time we're talking about, her Uranus opposition would have been conjunct or close to the Chiron.
Yeah, like a few years before, a couple years before, it would have conjuncted it. So the lead up would have brought up all the Chiron stuff.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, I know, but I always thought with my particular Chiron, it was like my friend groups and stuff like that, and being a 4-6, I think that's what probably pulled me through. And also, I was scaring my kids. They were more worried about me than I was worried about me.
And we can see that Chiron is in a sesqui-square, 20 degrees Aries, so we're talking 20 degrees Sagittarius, right? So that's going to put it right here in the middle again. So very strongly aspected Chiron.
Yeah. Well, I think about it a lot now. I'm like, okay, what were your goals? What did you actually want to accomplish by a Chiron return, you know?
And here it is, Pluto. In trine to the South Node, sextile to the North Node. Truth, potential truth being revealed through that experience? I mean, what can you say about yourself as a person now in relation to what you went through?
Kind of like just that I went through it. That it wasn't impossible, and kind of sharing it with other people, or just a empathy for, in a weird sense of a way of, I think people think about things very literally, when they talk even about suicide. Mine wasn't literal. I wasn't even an unhappy person. There's nothing nobody could have said to me. I feel like it was literally just in the stars almost. You know what I mean?
Well, whatever it is, I would also suggest, as a 6-line being, that it still is being revealed to you.
Yeah.
And as you approach the Chiron return, and again, we think Chiron, it is principally the wounded healer, but it is also teacher, educator, facilitator, right? Doesn't even mean you have to work in the healing industry, but there is something through this life experience that can be shared and supported for other people.
I think the biggest change for myself is I was an incredibly secretive person. I was always I'd listen to all your stories, but I wouldn't tell none of mine. So this is like a big deal for me to do these kind of things and even join this or, even talk about it now.
Well, I appreciate you doing that.
Oh.
And I'm with you. Those experiences, as I said, I'm not the same person. And it is. The words you use, I would use empathy. I could have never had the level of empathy and compassion I have for others if I had not been through that. Ever. There's just no way. Even though I consider myself like a good guy or whatever, I mean, there was just a whole new level of compassion and empathy.
I wouldn't exactly put myself as empathetic
but what was cool?
at the time.
Yeah.
Well, I've been accused of not because, because I wouldn't actually... showing empathy would have actually had been showing myself. I had empathy. I would do things to help people, but I wouldn't actually show the care that people would expect, as what they equate with empathy.
Okay, and what and hearing too, again, just pointing out or reemphasizing, this all makes sense when you think of how dynamic that sesqui square is to all of this tied up in this Sagittarian life force energy. There's the challenge, but this Pluto is so supportive down here between this trine and sextile and Libra. So again, just the basics of thinking about how is that truth that is still being revealed as we move towards your Chiron return. What is the truth of that, and how can that truth provide harmony, balance, and emotional support in the 4th house? Friends, family, immediate community. How can you support them in a balanced, harmonious way, in a very supportive, emotional way, with the truth that you've learned through that experience?
Well, for myself, I feel it's like to actually do the freedom, with even coming to these type of things. I've had a lot of people think I was very selfish, but I literally went straight to being a kid to an adult. And I feel like you can almost have that freedom that I never had younger, some people get it early in their life, some people get it late. I think I deserve to be the late,
Yeah, I wanted to point out something too. I often look at the Saturn cycles, the Saturn squares, as key moments in a person's life. Age 7, age 14, and so on. Well, your first Saturn square was conjunct Pluto. So, 7 years old, having Saturn conjunct Pluto. What a transit to go through.
Yeah, Jonah was pointing out that that the in her chart, her first quarter turn of Saturn, when it's squaring itself, would have been conjunct Pluto. Right. What do you remember from that period?
7 years old.
7 years old. Huh. Nothing really rings. That.
But then also at
second grade, somewhere around there.
Around second grade.
14, and then
I moved.
At 21, and,
Yeah.
they're all going to be in hard aspect to Pluto. It's.
What's your core in the gene keys? What's your center one?
What would that? I can tell you that one.
Design moon.
My design moon.
That would be the theme of 0 to 7. So that may refresh your memory.
I'm sorry. Design moon is 34. So 34.
What was design Venus?
Design Venus is
Design views.
18.2. Or no.
That's small.
64.5.
Does that bring anything to your 0 to 7?
What do you mean?
What are the keynotes of 64.5? How do you relate to that?
64.5. The way I relate to that one myself is always looking for answers, always knowing that what's right here in front of me really isn't right here in front of me.
Sounds pretty Plutonian.
Yeah, it just kind of feels like just always looking for different answers. I just believe that what's so, everything looks so one way and it's not. It's another way. I guess it's probably, I heard somebody talking somewhere earlier. It's like there's a different view. There's a different aspect. I like hanging out with people with the 47. I tell anybody that one. That's my favorite. It's like they give me the answers. You know what I mean? Like it's literally like, oh, that's what I was looking for. You now just, that's kind of like the way that the 64 plays out in my life. I feel it's constantly looking, but not looking for a particular anything in particular. Just saying that, hey, there's more out there. I just want to find it. Treasure hunting.
How does that relate to 0 to 7?
How to what?
How does that relate to 0 to 7?
0 to 7. I traveled a lot with my family. That's what I'd like to get back to, is the traveling a lot. We used to go on month vacations every year up until I was about 15. But 0 to 7, it was a big deal. I was able to travel a lot. My dad facilitated that we could travel all the time. And that got swept away once you graduate high school and you got to live on your own and you got to pay for your own stuff, And but that's where it stopped. And that's where I feel like I can pick back up 0 to 7. Makes sense to me.
So maybe real quick too, it's just so we get a snapshot here. All the Sagittarian energy, the T-square with Jupiter, and the nodes involved. Chiron strongly involved. Pluto strongly supporting the evolution of this truth as a six-line being moving to the Chiron return. So let's just kind of put a snapshot in that. And let's just go to the design chart real quick and just see if there's anything we can pull out of there. See what the body is leaning towards. So here we have Pisces rising, Jupiter conjunct Pisces, and now we've got this Sun, Mars, Pluto conjunction in Virgo and Libra. So I'm seeing a really strong body, right? Mars conjunct the Sun and Pluto. So there's a real, there's some definitely feeling the strength in that. And then that is all going to be sextile to the other Moon-Neptune conjunction in Sagittarius. Chiron being strongly aspected through a septile. And again, septile, the one we think of that's the 8th harmonic. So again, thinking that scorpionic, mystical. Septiles always mean something has the potential to come in. It's like I almost think of septiles like there's a potential for a portal where something's going to get downloaded somehow. And Chiron is the one doing that in Aries. So Chiron in Aries indicates, if you think of Aries being ruled by Mars and how we exert ourselves. Have you had any physical challenges
like recently?
Like in life? No, I mean just in general. Have you ever had any health setbacks?
No, just waking up with a random broken leg one day. That one was a little setback.
Did you learn anything mystical through that experience?
Yeah, I believe it was like one of my biggest challenges. I think it was what are you going to do with this broken leg? Are you going to become are you going to allow it to, or number one, are you going to become addicted to drugs? Number two, is it going to affect your work life? Because I knew that it stabbed me hard when somebody said, you won't be able to do what you do again. I was like, oh, hell yeah, I can. I think, was I going to use it as an excuse to not do things? Number one, it's kind of embarrassing to wake up with a random broken leg and, have to tell people, do I just tell them the truth? That was probably my biggest setback. Other than that, no.
Well, that kind of fits the aspect I was just talking about. That was a pretty revelatory challenge to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, I think of it as when I say that there's tests. That was a big one. I don't think it was the biggest one, but it was I wasn't going to make it to the next one if I didn't pass that one. You know what I mean? But yeah, that was 2017. Just one day, you just wake up and it's not even just broken. It's broken so bad that you can't walk for 6 months.
Oh my goodness!
I rolled around on a cart. I've got 9 pins in my ankle and a bar, and no clue how it happened.
Right.
So.
Wild.
And you have to accept that too.
Side, right?
That's a hard time. That's a hard one to accept, is not knowing how it happened. You're like, okie dokies. I don't know. I'm just gonna go with this one. Versus, because for a minute I was getting past life regressions, all these other things, and it's just hitting brick walls. And I was like, you know what? It's acceptance. Just accept. I don't know. I guess that was some of the stuff. You guys gave me insight I never would have looked into, and now I have focused on certain things, and I was like, oh, okay. Well, thank you.
Can I just interject something? I want to recognize you.
Okay.
We met in person in Costa Rica at the beginning of the year, and we met again here in the spring. You have evolved in that short period of time. I don't know why I'm getting emotional, but I feel like I have. No, seriously. You've calmed more down. You're accepting more of yourself, and you've dealt with a lot of the things that you dealt with in group, and you come across a lot differently than you did in January or in April. A little bit. I don't know if you're aware of your own.
No, my daughter pointed that out.
Progression in that, but I want to give you recognition of that.
Oh, thank you, Mark.
That's all. I don't know. Maybe I'm feeling you. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kristen.
Hey, thank you, Richard.
Should we take a break?
Sure.
Cool.